If you enjoy these kind of videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This video we're going to be going over what are the 6 best rogues after the Juke update. Now we're going to be going over them. They're in no particular order because it's just going to depend mainly on your playstyle. Let's start off at number 6 and we have Anvil, who's actually a really good beginner rogue and he's actually extremely solid after the perk update. Now he's actually got insane amounts of health. Also, the barricades are so useful because they have loads of health in them, so you can block off certain areas. You could also protect yourself with them as well, of course, but on top of that, you gain immunity to blinding and disorientating effects, which is kind of useful, especially if you're a beginner player. You don't really want to die to maybe like flashbangs and things like that. When it comes to weaponry, I do think you're actually getting a pretty solid deal here as well. In terms of the secondary, probably not so much, but when it comes to primary weapons, LMGs at the moment are literally broken, let's be perfectly honest. The Conviction is pretty much one of the best guns in the entire game, so if you do have it unlocked for one of your other rogues, you can use it for Anvil as well, which is what I highly recommend. The shotguns are not too bad. The SKL is probably the best one if I'm being perfectly honest, but the MLX MAW is actually a solid LMG as well, so either which way you pick any of the LMGs, you're going to be pretty much good to go. When it comes to the gadgets and things like that, the protection system, probably not all that useful, but C4 is definitely a solid gadget to have when you're trying to talk about kind of lethal equipment. Then moving on to the kind of perk section for Anvil, and here is what I kind of wanted to explain to you. So the main things you want to be leveling up here is things to do with that extra armor. So of course you want the armor legendary perk right here. Bulletproof is going to be even more useful on top of that, so you're pretty much not going to die at all. You've also got life drain on there as well, so once you down an opponent you're going to get your health back. So as you can tell, Anvil is kind of one of those characters that can survive through pretty much anything, which is a really solid thing to have in a character, especially for beginners. But not only that, if you can master this character, he's very good overall in my opinion. The only thing you're going to lack here is movement, but I suppose you can kind of sacrifice that for the amount of health this character has. At number 5, I'm going to have to go with Saint here. I think Saint's actually probably the best revive character in the game at the moment, and that is just due to the updates that Saint actually had recently. Now, I have a gameplay up with Saint, so if you do want to check that out, you can check that out. I'll leave a link to it at the end of this video. But of course, you've got the revive drone, which can revive teammates, and if you do revive teammates, it heals your health and your teammates' health as well. Which is actually pretty useful if you're resin with the drone in between gunfights, which can be extremely useful at keeping you alive. When it comes to actual weaponry, you've got assault rifles and you've also got the DMRs. The Mamba's pretty solid if I'm being perfectly honest. Probably the only DMR you want to use other than the Devotion. And then when it comes to assault rifles, we all kind of know what we're getting here. The Mark IV's solid, the Hydra's solid, the Nightshade's pretty decent if you want to be a bit more aggressive. The Riptide's okay, but overall, assault rifles are a solid weapon category to have for pretty much any character. So overall, we're actually getting good guns here, and the Mark IV, in my opinion, is actually one of the best guns to use at the moment. The fact that it's super low recoil, the fact that you can pretty much hip fire with this, and it's insanely accurate for an assault rifle, actually beats most SMGs, which is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. But overall, definitely solid options for weaponry. When it comes to perks, what you want to mainly focus on here is, first of all, you want to go for Lifeline and also Helping Hand. Then you can take whatever other perks you like, to be perfectly honest, but those two are the most important because you're going to get pretty much an insta-res, whether you're reviving manually or whether you're using the revive drone. You're pretty much getting insta-reses on teammates all the time, so that's what you want to mainly focus on in my opinion. That is what I always do when I play Saint. You want to level up those 2 perks first, and then you can take like armor or energized or whatever you want after that. It's not really too much of a big deal, but the main perks here is Helping Hand and Lifeline. You want to get that as quickly as possible. At number 4, and we can't really make any list without Lancer being on the list, let's be perfectly honest. Lancer has been a solid rogue since the beginning of the game, and that's not really changed too much. Now, of course, you're not going to get that extra health with this character. You're going to feel like you're dying really quickly, especially if you come up against an Anvil, something like that. And if your movement's not on point, I probably don't really recommend Lancer. It's kind of like a main kind of flanking character. So if you do pull off a lot of flanks, or if you're really good with your movement overall, then I recommend Lancer. But other than that, maybe stay away from this character. But overall, you get the quick and quiet ability, which basically allows you to be silent when you're trying to basically pull off a flank, for example, and it also gives you a movement speed boost. And then the passive is probably the main thing for this character, which is when you roll, you reload your weapon, and that's probably one of the main things I love about Lancer, because I reload weapons all the time. It's just a habit I have from playing other games, but having that ability there, because I roll a lot as well, is just extremely handy to know that you're always ready to go when it comes to a gunfight with this character. When it comes to weaponry, we've got pretty solid weapons here. We've got SMGs, which is pretty much the most powerful weapon category in my opinion. You can use the Ibex, which is pretty solid now. The D40C is okay. I would say the LMPX and the Objection, the SLC are pretty solid. The LMPX is probably the best SMG in the game at the moment, especially if you want to be a bit more with that long range engagements. Then the LMPX is extremely good at the moment. Then when it comes to shotguns overall, the SKL is probably going to be the best again here. I wouldn't really recommend shotguns all too much for this character because SMGs are the way to go. When it comes to perks, the main perk you want to equip as soon as possible is Stalker. It's going to give you that aiming strafe speed, which is kind of the main reason why we would go Lancer in the first place. Then maybe Life Drain, because let's be honest, you're going to need that health back as quickly as possible. And I'd probably go Shredder rounds just so you can compete with some of those armored characters in the game. But again, the rest of the perks is kind of up to yourself. So the main ones you want to go for first of all is Stalker and Life Drain. If you see any of my gameplay videos, you'll see what perks I buy kind of off the rip. And then what perks I would save up for and that kind of thing. So kind of the gameplay videos give you a good understanding of how you should use these rogues. But overall, like I said, you want to mainly focus on Stalker and Life Drain. Those are the two main perks for this character. At number 3, we have Switchblade. Now, I do think Switchblade just overall is quite a solid character. Now, she's not really going to stand out too much for many reasons, but a couple of the main things are the perks and then also the ability, which is probably one of the best at removing players from objectives. So if you're playing Strikeout, Switchblade is probably going to be a solid character to have on your team because the ability is going to allow you to draw characters away from the main objective, which is kind of hard to find with a lot of the characters now since Vi got nerfed. And some of the other characters are not as powerful anymore. So the ability is basically a rocket launcher that basically explodes and then leaves some fire damage over time. Fight and Flight is okay. It's not really going to be used in many situations, let's be perfectly honest. In terms of weaponry, you're actually pretty solid here as well. So what we've got is we've got assault rifles and SMG. So again, you can pretty much choose your whatever weapon you like here, let's be perfectly honest, because both of these weapon categories are extremely solid. So just choose whatever one you have unlocked, leveled up, or whatever one you prefer. And then when it comes to secondary, Spitfire is always really good because it's easy to use. Bounce grenades are pretty solid. Flashbangs, again, are pretty solid as well. You're almost guaranteed to kill. If you're in pretty close range and you blind an enemy, you're almost pretty much guaranteed to kill. So both of these are really good as well. Then when it comes to perks, again, Switchblade just has a well-rounded perk set, so you're gonna be golden for the most part. So we've got Volatile there, which is going to help with the actual potency of your damage over time with your main ability. The Blaster there increases the explosive damage, which is something you definitely want to go for. Life Drain's pretty solid. I mean, it's not the higher levels of Life Drain, of course, but it's definitely a solid perk overall. Stalker and Bulletproof are both good too. So, I mean, a lot of the perks for Switchblade are really good. So, I mean, you can go for pretty much anything you like here. I do recommend Blaster and Stalker. I think those are probably the main two that you want to go for. Especially with this character overall. Very aggressive character too. So, like I said, Switchblade just kind of overall very good for taking players off objectives. At number 2, we have Glitch. Now, this was actually between Glitch and Sigrid. Now, the reason why I chose away from Sigrid is because you do need to be a bit skilled to use Sigrid, especially to use her well, especially with the ability. I do feel like a lot of players that are really good with that character do extremely well, but Glitch is kind of overall a necessary player to have on your team, in my opinion, especially after all these new updates. First of all, the ability to hack equipment and not allow the enemy team to use their abilities is almost extremely important. And then when it comes to the passive ability, it's pretty solid as well to stop yourself getting killed all the time by like prox mines or whatever it is. So overall, the main ability and the passive are really good. When it comes to the armory and weapon categories, you've got shotguns and SMGs. So again, I would mainly go towards the SMG side of this, but you actually start off with probably the best shotgun and the best SMG in the game at the moment, in my opinion. So overall, you've got pretty solid weapon categories here. Then when it comes to the equipment or the gadgets, if you want to call it, Semtex is solid. Flashbangs are also really good too. When it comes to perks, I would say the perks are not so good when it comes to Glitch. the main ones you want to be focusing on here are energized and maybe armor. Those are probably going to be the two most important. The legendary perks for this character aren't really amazing. I mean, having a faster health regen is pretty good, but I mean, it's not really going to be something you need like all the time. And then Gunsmith is okay, I guess, for the most part, but you don't really need it to win most of your gunfights. So overall, I do think Energized and Armor are probably the two first perks you should really go for. But the main reason you'd choose a glitch is to combat against a character like Vi, someone like Trench, someone like Switchblade using the RPG, or even Anvil putting down his shields as well. This is probably the main character that can combat all of that, and that is why Glitch is a solid rogue to use. Last but not least, at number 1, we have Juke. Now, first of all, Juke's laser defense drone is absolutely broken. I would like to mention that. Now, even though it only does 2 damage for the most part, it's still really solid, to be honest, because it's not planted on the ground, so it's easily visible. You can pretty much plant it wherever you like. And you get 2 of them, so I do feel like it's pretty OP. The Juke boosts are pretty cool. I mean, it's a slightly different change to the movement mechanics in the game, so that passive is pretty cool to me. So overall, that's a solid part of the character. The main ability is just broken in my opinion. When it comes to weaponry, obviously you've got the Ibex, which is an SMG, but you've also got LMG, so you've pretty much got the 2 most powerful weapon categories in my opinion in this entire game at the moment. So you can pick whichever one you like. Let's be perfectly honest here, both of these are really good. So Juke's probably one of the more faster characters at using LMG, so if you like LMGs and you like to move a little bit quicker than some of the heavier characters, then Juke's solid. When it comes to perks as well, Juke has some really good perks too. So you've got Bulletproof there, which is going to allow you to take less damage. You've got Life Drain, which is not the highest level of Life Drain, but it's definitely still a good perk. And then you've also got Stalker on there as well. So I would recommend going for Stalker and then maybe Bulletproof or even Energized to get those abilities faster. I mean, that's what's going to make this completely broken as well. But like I said, Life Drain's also solid as well. So overall, Juke is pretty much broken in my opinion at the moment. So if you've not tried this character out, I highly recommend trying it out already. So there we have it. Those are the 6 best rogues. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.